Hi everyone, welcome back to Stereo Niche. Let's talk about the Pioneer TZ9. Come right back. The Pioneer TZ9. Had you heard of it before? If you had, you knew more about them than I did. When I found them at an estate sale several years ago, I had no clue what they were. I walked in, saw them, was quite surprised. It had the Pioneer name on it, and had no clue that they had ever released this model. So these were engineered by the Pioneer TAD group, the Technical Audio Devices engineering team of Pioneer. They typically develop their professional series line. But they did not retain that the tag. They actually were still released as the Pioneer Elite. Some different things about them. Well, first off, they're a substantial speaker. They're about 4 feet tall. They weigh, which is about 120 centimeters. They are 145 pounds, which is around 65 kilograms. You know, so not a small speaker. You're not gonna just lift it up and move it around by hand unless you're pretty substantial yourself. But not something I'm going to do. They had some exotic materials. They have a ceramic graphite material for the mid-range and the tweeter. As well, the tweeter is mid-mounted, if you'll notice here. And that was to lower it and keep it sort of closer at the ear level when you're seated. Has dual woofers, a front firing and rear firing, and they are internally connected, just in the same way as a KEF 1042 is done. So it's similar to that effect. And then dual ported. So they made them from 90 to around 96. It, for the most part, only came in this oak finish, except for 1 year. They actually made a piano black gloss finish, and I happen to have a pair. So as rare as they are, I've been lucky enough to run across 2 pair, one of the more common, but still not common, oak finish, and then the even more rare black finish. So at some point I will get them set up side by side and do a comparison. But for today, I am just going to review them against the Advents, and I'm going to do that now and come back to you and let you know my thoughts. See you soon. All right, review is done. I have summarized my notes. So let's go through them. To start off, some of the basics here that I always like to start off with now. The MSRP, the Advent, $240 a pair, 1978. $4,000 a pair, 1990. Pretty big difference. So what are you going to get for that money? Let's work through it. Advent 8 ohm speakers, Pioneer 4 ohm speakers. Pretty big difference there too. On the sensitivity, not so much. 89 on the Advent, 90 or 91 decibels on the Pioneer. Not really any difference to worry about. Configuration, again, reminder, this is a two-way tweeter woofer. This is a three-way. So, you know, pretty significant here. We got more drivers going on here, 2 woofers, in fact. So, you know, pretty significant difference. So let's talk about, before we get into sound, let's talk about styling. I usually comment and typically comment about size of the speaker because, you know, if it can be moved around, that's significant, more accommodating. And I typically add that at the end and talk about styling first. So I think these look really, really cool. I love these speakers in the way I like the the Yamaha NS1000. I think most people tend to run them without the grills. And that's because they've got such cool drivers. You want to show them off. And that to me is, you know, what you're getting out of this as well. It just looks cool. I'm a speaker nut, so, you know, that's kind of the way I lean. So I gave them an extra point. I couldn't take away. I ended up giving them 14 versus what the Advent have as a 13. So 1 point difference there. Moving into imaging. Let's talk about size of the speakers again. Big speaker, and it needs a big room. You're not going to enjoy these speakers in a small room pushing these speakers together. They're just not going to perform well. I think they need at least 10 feet between them, and you know, you could go more. What you're going to get from that is a room filled with sound. The entire space between the 2 speakers becomes the entire imaging soundstage, and it can be massive. And that is what you want. If you're not aiming for a large soundstage, then, you know, might as well get some computer speakers, as far as I'm concerned. That's what it's all about. You know, you're wanting to sit back and enjoy, you know, a big experience. And that's what these will deliver if given the room to do so. Once that space is given to them, it fills it up, and not just, you know, in a linear way. It's a very open, broad space from about the mid-level to about, I don't know, about here, I would say. I'll try to do a visual picture for you, but it's a huge soundstage, and that opens up the experience tremendously. I've mentioned before on all my other reviews, the Advents, their imaging is right in the center, and it's a little square, you know, right in the center of between the speakers. And while everything sounds great, it would sound so much more impressive if it had a wide soundstage, and that's what the Pioneers deliver in spades. They deliver a huge room full of speakers, and they're not, you know, in one plane. The speakers are up, you know, airiness to them. They're moved about. So that quality was tremendously different. And so for the Pioneers, I gave them an 18, and you know, the Advents, if you've seen a prior review, they rate a 15. So that's a pretty good difference of 3 points. Now, moving into the sound itself, on the low end, you've got 2 woofers here, you got a huge box, you got ports. There's a lot more low end. It should go without saying, but you have to kind of hear something sometimes. It doesn't always mean it's going to be true, but in this case, it does come through. The lows are much deeper, much more powerful, that you feel them, and they're definitely there. You know, the Advent, very respectable job. You can't knock them at all, but you're going to get something for this amount of space, you know, this amount of size. So 17 points I give for the low end on the Pioneer, and the Advent had scored a 14. Now, into the mids. You know, that's just a cool mid. You know, I mean, I almost like it just by looking at it, but, you know, listening to it, you gotta listen closely. It delivers. It delivers a silkiness to it. It's just so smooth. And of course, the imaging helps too. It helps by putting that mid-range, you know, out in the center where you want it and out front, but it does it in an extremely smooth way. I've raved about the Advents because it does a phenomenal job with just 2 drivers. So it's an incredible speaker, and it's credible partly because of how well it does in the mid-range. So I like them both. I like the Pioneer just a little better, so I gave it a 17 versus a 16 for the Advent. Now, moving into the high end. And this was a point that I stopped and listened to for an extended period and on different tracks because I was really wanting to try and express this as best I can. Clear with more tone is what I wrote. However, what does that mean? What does that translate to? So if you think about the difference between a grand piano and a regular upright piano, you know, they both can play well, they can be tuned very well, but with that grand piano, you're just getting just a little more to it, a lot more depth. And that's what I'm getting with this tweeter. It just has a lot more fullness to it in a way. You would think more of that in lower end, lower like mid-range and low end on the woofer side of things, but I did get that sense on the tweeter side. So I really enjoyed it. And for me, I have, you know, I mentioned it before, sensitive ears. There are certain tweeters that can give me fatigue. I had none of that. Enjoyed every aspect of this tweeter. So I ended up giving it an 18 versus a 16 on the Advent. And I absolutely adore the Advent tweeter. So let's talk about total. So that adds up to a total of 84 points for the Pioneer and 74 points for the Advent. That's not insignificant. That's actually quite a bit. You're getting something for the money you're going to spend on the Pioneers. It isn't, you know, just great looking, interesting design. There is actually value add here in the outcome of the sound. So again, only buy this speaker if you have a big room. If you don't have a big room, you know, pass on it. Really, you're just not going to get it if you've got these just sitting on either side of your stereo. That's just simply not enough room. You need a large room to give them that space to create that sound stage for you. And only then are you really going to get what they can deliver. So that's it. That's my summary. Hope you enjoyed it. If you like these reviews, hit that subscribe. Want to be informed that they're out. Hit that little bell as well, notifications. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for joining.